Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Winds channel. And we are going to take a really close look at today, that is Sunday, June 21st, solar eclipse, new moon at 1 degree Cancer. And we'll also look at the week ahead through next Sunday. Okay, so let's talk about eclipses first. This is the second eclipse in our eclipse season number 1 of this year. Our eclipse seasons are near Gemini, Cancer, and Sagittarius times of the year. So we had our first eclipse approximately 2 weeks ago. It was a lunar eclipse, and definitely have heard a lot of people, saying how this eclipse affected them, and we've seen a lot of how the world is played out in that eclipse too. And I'm not going to go over that again. You can go back a couple videos and look at that video if you need to get the details on that eclipse. And remember, the eclipse is not just valid or poignant on the day of the eclipse. It's actually, just like a lot of other aspects, about a month before and up in at least a month after, you'll be feeling a lot of the effects of any changes that may occur that change the direction or course of your life from the eclipses. So and that being said, like I said too, the last time, the degree of the eclipse can actually be a potent point for even years to come when it's hit by other planets. So anyway, a little background on eclipses first. One of the things that maybe you don't realize, unless you're an astronomer or an astrologer who's looked into the details of eclipses, is eclipses are actually a family. So there is a time when an eclipse family is actually born, and there's a cycle where that eclipse at that degree comes up every 18 years or so. And if you understand how the astrology and astronomy work together with the sun and moon and the moon's nodes, you would understand how every 18 years that occurs in a cyclical nature. And astrology is all about cycles. That's why we can determine a lot of what's going to happen based on what that cyclical nature has done in the past. So an eclipse is basically born at one point, and it's born at either the North or South Pole, and it's a very partial small eclipse when it's first born. And that eclipse family will run over 1,000 years, and every 18 years or so, that eclipse family will come up in the eclipse season. So they actually, there's been research done on solar eclipses, which is what we have now. A solar eclipse occurs when it's a new moon. A lunar eclipse occurs when it's a full moon. Okay, so the solar eclipses, there's the families of those eclipses. There's been a lot of research done on them, and birth charts of when the active eclipses that are going on now occurred. So this eclipse first occurred in May of 1389, and it will go on until the year 2633. And it started at the North Pole. It's called Saros Series North 4. And it will eventually, as the eclipse goes down, works its way down the Earth to the South Pole over those 1,000 years. Every 18 years when it comes, it moves a little bit further down. It started at the North Pole and becomes more and more of a full eclipse as it reaches the equator, when it becomes a full eclipse about 650 years into its cycle. And then eventually it goes down. into the south and disappears. So my point in that is that every one of these eclipses actually has a birth chart of the original eclipse, which imprints it with a certain energy that always comes up every 18 years when that eclipse occurs. So that's really kind of one of the important things to kind of understand. And this eclipse, the birth chart of it is not an easy birth chart. Okay? The birth chart of this eclipse is all about being restricted. It's all about being inhibited. It's all about individuals not being able to take the actions they want to take because of what's going on around them in society. And one of the most important things to know about eclipses is they seem more fateful to people. Like, you don't have as much control of the situation. And like I said the last time, they can actually be like walking down a street, and you're walking down a street for blocks and blocks and blocks in the same direction, and suddenly you make a right or left and start walking in another direction. So that's how an eclipse can be on our life path. The thing is, many times with eclipses, the reason they're more fateful is because they are tied into society and collective consciousness. So many times there's events that are occurring that latch into that eclipse's energy and makes it almost impossible for us individually to do what we would really like to do in the situation or a time that we're in. So to me, this eclipse, the birth chart of it is saying there is like, being stuck, being restricted, being inhibited, and we know eclipses can cause events in society that exactly make us feel that way. So in addition to all that, solar eclipses, which is the new moon eclipse, are much more poignant and likely to occur as physical events that manifest in reality, in physical reality. A lunar eclipse, like I told you guys last 2 weeks ago, a lot of times that can be a lot more internal. And I'm not saying that things don't happen, but a lot of times the source of those things can be internalized energy. So like, solar eclipse is a lot different than that. It can really be a situation where we just can't control where that energy is coming from. We just have to deal with it. So here we have that birth chart stamp. And the one aspect that this eclipse is making, and remember, the moon and sun are conjunct in a new moon and a solar eclipse. So they're making aspects together if they're making an aspect to another planet. And the one aspect they're making is the quincunx to Saturn. And it's an exact partile quincunx to Saturn at 0 to 1 degrees Saturn Aquarius, where Saturn retrograde in Aquarius is right now. And what does that mean? The very same thing that the birth chart of this eclipse means. It means inhibitions. It means a lot of inner fear. It means a lot of outer forces like authorities and stuff stopping us from what we want to really do. And what it sets up is a division within us that's very hard to find the balance with, because we have certain duties that we feel we need to do in order to literally survive, and we also have emotional needs. And the feeling that this eclipse series can give you is you have to choose between one and the other, which is really, really difficult. So it's a lot of adjustments, a lot of separations, a lot of letting go of certain things in order to find the correct balance. So here we already have two things that are showing us that this eclipse can be very challenging from the blocks it's going to create from the external world to what we actually want to do, and also just be able to find like emotional satisfaction and security. So the eclipse is at 0, 1 degree Cancer. So what is Cancer all about? Same thing. Cancer is all about security first. Security for you and your family, your home, your most needed possessions, your heritage, your nation in a bigger sense. So when Cancer is not feeling like it's getting what it needs to survive in a balanced way, it can get very negative in trying to control situations and people through manipulation, and can get very selfish in the way it approaches things. So what we really need to look at in this eclipse is to be sure that we're not feeding that kind of energy, because it will be really easy to fall into the negative Cancer traits based on what's going on in the world. And let's just look at that really simple. We have a virus going around the world that has many of us very restricted. We have all these protests going on around the world. We have authorities reacting to those protests with restrictions. So you can see the negative part of Cancer can be really fed by the outer events that are going on. And this eclipse, you can see, has already been in effect for a month. It's been building more and more restriction into people's ability to choose to do what they actually want to do every day. So, when Cancer is feeling positive, when Cancer is feeling like its emotional needs and its basic material needs are being met for itself and its family, and that its home is not under threat, then Cancer can be an incredibly emotionally supportive sign. One of the supposedly biggest differences between humans and animals and other life forms is our ability, to have all these emotions and come from an emotional state. Now, I actually question that on many basic levels, that other life forms aren't feeling emotions too, but that's a whole nother tangent to go off on. The fact of the matter is, Cancer is the most emotional sign. It's ruled by the moon. So literally the moon is ruling this eclipse of itself. And the problem with the emotions is when they are allowed to be the driver and just spin things out of control. So here the sun, which is conjunct the moon now, which is our, path in life, right now the driver is our emotions. And the danger with all this restriction and blockages and inhibitions going on is that we will fall into the negative part of the Cancer traits. So, to top that off, at 0, 1 degrees, critical degree, super critical degree actually. Critical degree because it's the beginning of a sign. And what that means is, there's a big divergence here. What a lot of people do when a degree is at the beginning of the sign is they fall back into the past of what worked for them in the past when they're feeling insecure. And that is a major Cancer trait too, that the past is super important to Cancer. It's the most important time frame of the 3 time frames that we live through in a physical body on Earth. So we have a tendency, when we're feeling Cancer energy strongly and feeling our security threatened emotionally, to fall back into past behaviors. And the 0-1 degree, we could easily fall back into past behaviors. And remember, this is all functioning on a societal level too. So a nation could fall back into its past behaviors very easily right now, in reaction to the chaotic world that's going on right now. To top that off, what makes it super sensitive degree is it squares the Aries 0 degree point, which is a very potent point. So it's like the solstice point is squaring the equinox point, basically. So this is just really downloaded into physical existence, and we can just see how this is going on around us right now. So, and to top all that off, when you look at what else is in Cancer right now, Mercury retrograde is in Cancer right now. So, what may happen is, like, a lot of this stuff that we're feeling, we're going to really mull it over inside ourselves with this Mercury retrograde and really try to figure out, like, hey, what's going on here? And remember, the North Node, which is why we have an eclipse, because the Sun and Moon are conjunct the North Node, is actually at 29 degree Gemini. So it's not in Cancer. It's actually in Gemini, in Mercury retrograde sign. So remember, we talked about this, the North Node right now in Gemini for the next year and a half is like, what is fact? What is fiction? That is the most important thing to determine for you and society and groups and communities that we're in. So the positive part of an eclipse or new moon at 0-1 degree Cancer, or any sign, is we can actually decide we are going to reinvent the way we do Cancer. And we are going to reinvent the way we deal with family and with home and with the things that we basically need. So that is what we need to try to figure out, I think. I think the Mercury Gemini energy and Mercury retrograde and the North Node there is like, who is your real family? Is it time to find a new family? Or even more so, since many of us are stuck with our families now, we may see things in our family and how they've been affecting us and how they've been restricting or inhibiting us, which is what this eclipse is all about. And maybe we need to decide to start to make different choices. So that is a lot of what this eclipse has to do with. And I know there's a lot of people out there right now who are like, hey, this is like beginning of a new chance, new energy, new age, new hope, this eclipse. And it will require a lot of work. Basically, what this eclipse needs to do is to find the right balance between what we need emotionally and what we actually really need to survive. And that's where that Mercury North Node Gemini inside ourselves, Mercury retrograde, has to determine, like, what do we really need materially so that we don't go for too much and shut down and become cold-hearted, which is what the quincunx Saturn can actually do to us, can make us fall back into like structure just for the security reasons and actually just create our own prison almost. So like really need to look at like what do we really need, and like don't forget the emotions, because that's the balance we need to find, and it's not going to be an easy thing to do. And I know there's a lot of stuff out there right now where, oh, you know, it's an eclipse, it's a big chance, 0 degrees, blah blah blah. If you know this eclipse family, if you know what the quincunx to Saturn exact means, if you know the negative Cancer tendencies when security is feeling threatened, you understand that this is not an easy task ahead of us dealing with this eclipse. Okay, so look at the house in your chart that has 0-1 degree Cancer, and that will tell you the area of your life where this eclipse is really going to come into play. So say it's in the 11th house of groups and friends and goals. You may have to look at how your family, or you know, the people that are your family, are affecting the way that you relate to groups or your other friends, or affecting your very own goals. And you may have to do some adjusting and separating from that. So that's the kind of energy we're looking at with this eclipse. And yes, the possibility is there to find that correct balance personally, but we all have to admit that what's going on in the outer world right now is playing exactly what this eclipse is all about: feeling restricted and inhibited, not being able to take the freedom maneuvers that you would normally take to do what you normally would do. So it's really plugged in to the physical world. It's a solar eclipse. Social events and the collective square the solstice point. It's locked into what's going on in the world right now, and we are all personally affected by that. All right, there's 3 other things I really want to mention for this week coming up. We have 2 planets changing directions, and we have another planet changing signs. The first one is Tuesday, when Neptune goes retrograde. Okay, that, like I said, we're at the height of the retrograde season. We got a bunch of planets going retrograde, which is normal for this time of the year. A lot of times, a lot of the outer planets will be going retrograde at the same time, and for many months. So Neptune, when he goes retrograde, will be retrograde until almost the very end of November. So, you know, we're in for another long 5 months almost retrograde period. And what is that? You know, Neptune retrograde is very subtle. You're not going to like immediately feel or see acute events occurring. Basically what it is it's like a 5-month period where we're going to be internally really looking at our own values and what inspire us, our spirituality, our creativity, and how that is working or fitting into the world. And now also we have Venus, which has been retrograde for 6 weeks in Gemini, finally going to go direct on Thursday. Of course, it will be also in a shadow period, so you're not going to immediately let it go. But what should happen is the relationships that survived the Venus retrograde period will now have some new foundation that they can work off of, or the ones that didn't survive, you'll get the complete separation from. So it'll really start to turn relationship stuff around slowly, where things start moving in a forward direction again. Although with Mercury retrograde in Cancer for the next 2 weeks or so still, you're not going to see a lot of direct forward motion. I think it'll be more like inside, where you'll be finding, oh, okay, this is how this relationship is defined by me now. And now I'm going to internally adjust to that. And then slowly over the next few weeks, that will be like brought into that relationship by you. And obviously that changes the dynamics of that relationship. So that's a pretty big day there on Thursday with Venus going direct. And then the last thing is next Saturday, Mars goes into Aries. So that's really interesting. I mean, Mars in Aries that's the sign it's most comfortable in. It rules Aries, and that is the energy that Mars is most likely to be able to do what it likes to do, which is act in an individual way. Mars in Aries is like, let me lead by example. I am not interested in telling you what to do, but if you want to see what I do and, join me, or, use that to move forward yourself, I'm all for that. But I'm not going to sit here and dictate orders to you. I'm just going to go out and do it. So it's a really great time to just like pursue our personal objectives and projects. And, the danger of it is we really shut out others when Mars is in Aries, to the point where actually people can become fearful of you, because the energy of Mars in Aries can come off as very aggressive at times, especially if Mars in Aries gets angry with you. It's quick to anger, it's got a hot temper, but it also is quick to forgive and let go. It really doesn't hold things personally. Mars in Aries is the warrior archetype, and that warrior was needed in order for the tribe to survive. But he was also like admired for being able to be this strong, physical, secure presence, but also somewhat feared because of that strength and because of this individualistic streak that Aries has, that can easily get aggressive when under a lot of conditions. So Mars will be in Aries for a couple months, so it's a really good time to initiate projects that that you're really into. And if you can find other people that are into those projects too, then you can really get a lot done. There's a lot of physical energy to access when Mars is in Aries too. All right, I've gone on a while at this point, but I really felt like the talk about the eclipse had to be really clear. So we have one more eclipse coming up in early July. In 2 weeks there will be another lunar eclipse, the third and final eclipse of this eclipse season. So, and that will be in Capricorn. So we'll talk about that when we get there. And then the other thing is, I am going to look at the summer solstice chart set for Washington, D.C., and do a blog on that likely tomorrow. If you're interested in the mundane astrology and looking at the next 3 months of the U.S., and you can go back on the Astrological Winds channel and find the one I did 3 months ago for this quarter, and you can see how it really showed what was going to happen in the U.S. this quarter. It really rang true with that. So I will be taking a look at that. And then next week, we not only have a weekly, I think we have a monthly too, because it's going to be so close to the beginning of July. So I'll probably end up taking I'll do a monthly and then a little weekly at the end of it. All right, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I am available for all kinds of readings. My email is mattthue@gmail.com. And please feel free to share the Astrological Winds channel with anyone you know who might be interested. And please, be a follower at the bottom. You can just become a follower of the channel, and you'll always know when I'm posting another video. All right, we've got a task in front of us trying to find that right balance between what we need materially and what we need emotionally. So, time to walk the razor's edge or the tight wire or whatever you may call it. But remember, these events going on in the world are going to continue to dictate a lot of what we are able and not able to do for now. All right, this is Matt Lawton. I'm signing off. You have a wonderful week. Peace.